And we have a good show for you today. We're very fortunate to have Jim from Valvoline here to present for us. Jim leads the security team for Valvoline and is essentially responsible for implementing their security strategy. So I think Jim will be sharing sort of his philosophies on cybersecurity, his approach to it, and we'll even, certainly put in a little bit about how he uses VMRay Analyzer within his security solutions. And I can say that I've had the opportunity to chat with Jim multiple times over the days, weeks, and months that we've had the opportunity to work together. I can tell you he's definitely a very smart guy. He's passionate about a lot of things, be it board games, music, cooking, and certainly cybersecurity. But I think ultimately what I've learned in speaking with Jim is that he's passionate about protecting people from the threats that are out there, basically being a real life superhero for us all. And so with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you, Jim.
Hey, thanks, Zach. Yeah, I kind of want to get started and jump into this because I kind of cover a lot. Um, so I'll just kind of kick it off here. The first thing that I like to talk about is a job worth doing is worth doing together. I can't talk enough about teamwork. It's true that good defined processes, alert fatigue, um, the unhappy security guy. It's kind of a thing that's out there, right? So the happiest I've been in my job is when we're collaborating. I'm a big collaborator. I believe that I don't know everything, but if I surround myself with a good team, somebody will have that answer, right? And listening to that answer or listening to that teammate is super important. So I always kick this off with saying, a job worth doing is worth doing together. And I really mean that. I'll talk a little bit later about, a definition of a good cyber team and what types of people that you want to look for your cyber team. But keep in mind that, IT ego, you got to kind of kick it out the door. You can't know everything. This field changes constantly. It's always adapting. Adversaries actively trying to defeat you. So you have to have a good team, a good communication with your team and with your business, your IT team. This is one of the few times when you're everything from maybe a project manager to a leader to a communicator to you're talking to the end user, you're gathering information. You got a guy that's putting all this information together and feeding you what he's finding in the hunts that he's doing during the incident and stuff like that. So I can't stress enough, a good cyber team has good processes, absolutely, but also has good communication. They're kind of best pals. So I want to talk a little bit about my history and where I came up from. I've been in IT for around 22 years. I was in messaging collaboration, worked for several different companies, and I was kind of like an innovation guy, right? I had big ideas and how I wanted to see the world start to communicate. Um, about 8 years ago, almost nine now, I got an opportunity to move into the um, cybersecurity world. A long time, that's kind of a long time, right? Especially in the how rapid things change. We Valvoline were part of Ashland. As part of Ashland, we were an internal um, company, and we did IT was basically uh, an Ashland entity or whatever. So, we had very much like most of you guys standard, industrial control systems. We had chemical recipes. We had around 7 to 10,000 users. At any given time, we had your standard IDSs, your standard email gateways, your antivirus, and what I call the blocking and tackling kind of security. You have identity management, you have like this giant dam of security, and you're patching things all the time, and you're creating accounts, making sure you have security on those accounts. You have audit, people looking at those accounts and things like that. And that's not what I'm talking about when I talk about cybersecurity. It's part of cybersecurity, but it's not what I'm going to cover, right? This is kind of a newer concept, a new idea, a new thing that we like to, and I like to kind of get out there. Also, a few years ago, it's like 3 years ago now, we Valvoline split from Ashland. We became the actual public company Valvoline. So a lot of people didn't know we were actually owned by Ashland, and we split, which was interesting because when we did the split, they came to us and they were like, well, what do we do about cybersecurity? Because you guys have created this really cool program. We don't know what to do. We can't rehire you. We can't rehire people like you right now because what do we do? So what we ended up doing was we did cybersecurity for both Ashland and Valvoline and some others over the course of probably I guess 4 years. And then recently we had to restructure again. So we had a team of 12 that created a homegrown. We didn't really call it a SOAR at the time because we didn't know what that meant, but like a homegrown SOAR called ACE. And we had a lot of things like doing stuff. It's an automation process, checking logs, pulling stuff in, correlating events, pulling stuff in. You do a lot of cool things. And a couple years ago, Valvoline decided we didn't want to do support for Ashland anymore. So we did split the team. My team got left down to like 3 people. We've now grown back up to 5 on the cybersecurity team, or the incident response team. So currently, right now, I am a incident responder for Valvoline, and we're in the process of redesigning what that looks like post our developers leaving. Essentially, is what it is. We've got most of it lined out, but I'm going to take you through what I think is our process and how, in a completely homegrown solution that we created and a corporate tools kind of solution that we're moving towards, how this process worked in both of those realms, and how we went from 12 people on the team to like 5 people on the team, and we're still able to keep up with our alert queue and not have alert fatigue. It's a really happy environment to work for. I really enjoy my years at Ashland and Valvoline and stuff, because it's always been really challenging and changing, and the opportunities that's led to me to where I am today. So that's enough about my history. But I'm going to talk about like what's important to start. I walk in every day. I assume that I'm compromised every day. You should assume that you're compromised if you don't have a modern incident response team. And I don't mean a SOC, I mean an actual incident response team, somebody who's actually looking for things in your environment. We have one, and I walk in every day thinking, okay, so what did I miss? Or how am I compromised? I know that's an alert that's kind of you set, but it's something that, like, why do I exist if I don't assume that, right? Of course I'm going to assume, hey, I'm compromised. Someone lost a password somewhere, or somebody defeated a network firewalls or did something. That's why I'm there. That's my job, is to look for and hunt through logs and stuff like that. I also can't stress this enough. This is not your SOC. This is not part of the help desk. This is an elite group that's outside the line of the help desk. They're not answering how-to network questions. They're not helping you do change management stuff. We even have our own separate chat system. We're so segmented away. But that's not saying that we don't help them when they need it, or if they ask us questions, we don't respond to tickets and things like that. But we are outside of the help desk IT tier. We're our own entity pretty much. So cybersecurity is not identity management. It's not access management. It's not patching. It's not antivirus patching. It's none of that. It's more than the incident response is more than just that. And a lot of people don't know where to start. Like, what we did is we started internally at first. We hired a CISO, and then that CISO asked for a great network person, email person, a great desktop server person. The reason I picked those, or the reason we say that's a good place to start, is I'll explain a little later what your threat landscape is going to look like, and why it's important to understand what normal looks like in your current environment, and why, when you pick those people as a place to start, they're going to have history there with your environment. They're going to have knowledge of what normal kind of sort of looks like, or how to navigate some of these ins and outs when you're trying to secure your threat landscape. Also, when you pick a leader that's able to talk to senior leadership that values your program. Security is something that, like, if you do it really well, people don't really remember you. So you have to find a way to keep that in front of the business leaders so that they're still able to support you, give you money for stuff that you want to buy, or give you money for or support for processes and policies that you want to put in place. And that's anything. That's anything in the security. When I mean you need a leader who's good at, from a senior leader perspective, that can talk to your business leadership. He's got to understand identity management. He's got to understand cybersecurity, incident response, phishing, things like that. Why those things are important, and can give reports about like events that your security incident response team, I'm gonna call it CSIRT from now on, your CSIRT team, give them like knowledge of what you're seeing, and that can be anything. We structure things around the kill chain, and basically, we report on things that are delivered to the mailbox or delivery, like if a USB stick infected a PC and the antivirus stopped it, that's kind of like weaponization. But like if it didn't stop it and it was actually delivered to the PC and it got infected, that's an incident in our world. We have alerts and incidents, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but just remember, your leader needs to be somebody that can support your program, and show leadership how you're improving their security stance. And then our method is that we develop it, we test it, when we rework it. Cybersecurity is always changing. It's super important to understand that. Incident response is a critical business process, and a lot of organizations kind of are missing this piece of it. It's critical because it requires, like like I was saying, a skilled, specialized workforce. But that's not saying that you can't go out and get a really good network co-op and teach them how to do this. Sorry, I was getting a drink. But with that being said, like your senior incident guys, your senior, like the desktop guy, the guys that knows what normal looks like. You could take like a co-op, network co-op, maybe and make a great level 1 incident responder, because they're hungry, and I'm going to talk about what makes a really good person. They're curious. They at that age as a co-op, they're in college. They're looking to improve their careers, looking how to get more into security. So maybe that's somewhere, like if you don't have the budget to go out and hire someone, you can bring in like a co-op or something and train them to be your level 1 incident responder or whatever. But when you're hiring that team, or when you're looking for those qualities and people inside inside your business or your company, I look for these things when I'm talking to people. Like the number one thing too is curious and perceptive. Like, does that guy want to know how things work? Because like I'll see an alert and then I kind of sort of understand it, but it may be something I've never done, but I want to understand how that works more. Or better. So I'll go out there and I'll start Googling, or get on Microsoft's website and look through articles about why the service kicks off in this this other area where it shouldn't, and then understand like kind of that's not normal, and then I'll dig into why that's not normal, and then from a very analytical perspective, start to put the pieces of this event together and try to work it. And it's a high pressure job. I mean, if something does, get in or compromise you, or someone gives up their password, you got to understand that, handle these with a sense of urgency. So, you have to work under the gun. You have to take notes and have someone who is attention to details, that has checklists and knows how to, recreate processes and things like that. I know this is a long list, but it's true. This is what a cybersecurity person, in my opinion, is like what they need to be. And creative, imaginative is really important, because these things change all the time, right? It's an area that is always changing. Some things I like to point out about always changing. I like to point out the problem is much more fluid in cybersecurity than like a field like accounting or like programming, like a web widget or something. You could build some software, you can solve a problem, you can do everything, and like, users don't spend like every week and every day trying to compromise your security or beat what you've kind of built. Your adversary's job is to figure out how to undermine your process. So like your problems are going to change week to week, and it's exciting. I love that part of my job. I really enjoy coming in every day and learning new cool techniques, new things that that are kind of going on in the world. I have my, my feeds and my external intel things I read, and my uh, uh, Reddit feeds, my Twitter feeds, all this stuff, and to see what my counterparts are doing, or I go and attend things and see all this new stuff that's happening, and how things are changing. I mean, you think of it, just a few years ago, ransomware was huge, and it's like now it's phishing, right? So that kind of stuff is really changing. So I can't stress enough, this team, you keep changing and learning. Toyota has a concept called Kaizen, where you're continuous improvement. So you're always improving your program. You're always making it better. So what works for you may not work for me, but what works for me may not work for you. So make it yours. Make it something that you understand and identify your threat landscape. I will say, I feel like this process that we've come up with, it's really it's the OODA loop, which is basically what a fighter pilot kind of looks at. And this is kind of the process that we go through whenever we were building our cybersecurity process or whatever, and it's used other places and stuff, but for us this is what kind of worked. Basically, like with the detect and response part, we determine how far in the kill chain the attack went, and then examine that. So we take an alert and create an event so that we can start taking notes on it, right? And then we write up a wiki and we create indicators. I've kind of coined a new thing. There's indicators of compromise that everybody in the business is kind of used to seeing. There's some things I call indicators of maliciousness that I use internally, where it may not be 100% like a compromise, but it may give us indicators that something might be going on. So like, we take these indicators and we write up like what we see, and 100% like what we want to test. And then we do detection. If detection's low, then we look further and deeper and to see, like, did we miss something? Should we, why is detection low, kind of thing. What's cool is we, like I said, we test that, right? And the frequency of analysis tests these indicators across all of our history. And what I'm doing with this is a visibility, like a log searching, a SIEM or a Splunk, Elk Stack, I guess Elasta, stuff like that. So we're looking across history and seeing how many times things hit, so that we can decide whether or not we want to deploy these as good indicators in production for detection tools. So like we have a SOAR, and the SOAR takes our hunts that we've created and then runs them through our process, and they look and see how many times does this actually hit an environment. And if it's low, then I create a hunt on it, looking for it in the future. If it's high, I try to figure out why. Well, is it just a normal process that I'm seeing in an environment? And I always ask that question: is what does normal look like in this situation? Like, does your install team run PowerShell commands out of a roaming folder? Probably not. But that's why that desktop guy's there. He can answer those types of questions for me. Or if I have to go to that desktop team and say, hey, we noticed you're installing stuff out of the roaming folder. That doesn't make sense. Why are you doing that? What's your process look like? What's your normal installation or running PowerShell commands, or whatever looks normal for your environment. So understand through this process what's weird. And I like to take a second to explain a little further what I mean by this. Enterprise tools, you know they're going to block around, I'm just saying high level, 90%, right? Your email gateway, your firewall, your antivirus, all these enterprise class kind of like blocking and tackling programs are going to do like 90% of your job for you, right? And that's great. That's what you want them to do. I'm not saying don't look at those blocks, because you learn a lot from that stuff. What I'm really wanting to focus on is the things that beat that. Whenever an email comes in through an email gateway and it doesn't catch this fish, and the fish lands in the mailbox, you've got to find a way to detect on that fish, and stuff. And we'll talk about a little bit of that later. But or like someone puts a USB drive in and the program executes, and the antivirus doesn't see it, because there's people out there that are in the adversary world that test these things, and they actively try to find ways to beat the enterprise class tools. I mean, they're out there. They can subscribe to them too. They can test them, and find ways around them. So that's why we have to stay on our feet, right? So when you're looking for things, we say that's why you cast a wide net. False positives are okay, especially when you're a young, like kind of team. You're going to get a lot of false positives at first. You want to weed out the things that are legit and start to look for things that are malicious, that are weird, that are out of the ordinary. So define what normal looks like to you. What things should you look for when you have a compromise? The one I always like to point out was something just last year. I don't know if you guys remember or have Citrix, but there was a situation where the receiver, the people are able to kind of backdoor into it and steal and scrape your password lists and do some things and put some stuff down that compromise that system. And I knew from working the queue a lot, and from a network perspective, when I was doing searches, we were getting alerts that they're reconning these two boxes. And from a historical analysis perspective in our store, I noticed that we've never seen recon to those boxes ever, but we went from having like nothing to having like 10,000 hits on those boxes of scanning recon, right? And I'm like, well, that's super weird. What's going on? So I got hands on keyboard to that system and I started poking around. And sure enough, I had found in the logs, um, that people were actually connecting, posting, pulling things, stuff like that. And that was a couple days before the patch or Citrix even recognized that there was a problem there. Another good thing we do, or we did, this has been years ago, is we took it from a perspective of like, how do we work back from compromise to find out how to identify a compromise? And what I mean by that is, for example, credentials stolen for a user. We said, okay, so fish comes in, user clicks on said fish, it goes to the credential harvester site, they put in their password. Well, what's the next thing, or if I'm an adversary, what's the next thing I'm going to do? Well, I'm going to try to log in with the credentials. And sometimes it's automatic, sometimes it's a guy sitting there waiting for that lure to hit and them to try them or whatever. But we all say that if we have two-factor authentication in our environment, we're going to see a two-factor push around the time of the fish. So what we'll do is we have alerts based on emails that come in. We find those emails, right? And then we go and find out that a user did go to the site. Of course, sometimes they're secure, so you can't tell if they submitted the credentials or not. But after that, we do see a two-factor push coming from somewhere else. Well, that's a good indicator that the user probably needs to have the password reset. So we reset their password. We call them and the manager and say, "Hey, reset your password," and do some other things on the back end. But that's a good place to start. Like we alert on, we correlate fish, whenever fish came in, to them going to a site to a two-factor push, and that's pretty much an indicator that user's that's had their credentials stole. So it's just simple stuff like that, and thinking through your process and thinking through like what can I do to make things uh, alert on things. Like one of the first alerts we started with antivirus because it was something we did really well, but like kind of find what you do well in your environment and start there. The next thing we tackled was phishing, because I was an email guy of 15 years, so I was like, well, let's see what we can do for phishing. We started looking at external intel, and over time we've built from this process a really good internal intel process that we alert on things, and we know our adversaries who are actually physically like sending fish into us. We can spot them and tell you what groups are doing what and who's doing what and whatnot. It's through intel. I can't go real deep in that process because it's kind of how our sauce is made, but I can tell you that you want to look at subjects, URLs they're using, techniques they're using, IP addresses they're using. A good one, and I can share this one, of course, is, and I'll talk a little bit more about it later, but a Nigerian email hunt. I took the IP addresses in all of Nigeria. You can get that through a search, and I created a search that whenever the X originating IP address comes from Nigeria, alert on it. And the reason I did that was because we had no business units in Nigeria that were sending mail into us, and I found a whole bunch of messages. Now they do use VPN, and they do route off of various VPNs, but we, because of those types of intel that we gathered from context of the email, the subject, the URLs they were using, and things, understand better about what VPNs they were using, and what that network of people were using, what Tor segments they were trying to go through, or what VPNs they were trying to use, or whatever. So building that intel up is really cool. Another neat thing you can do for this is when you're trying to find things to alert on, and this is a really simple one, is pull your who is information of when a domain was created, and alert on that. Because like if it's just been minutes, then that's probably a fish. Or like the URL that's in there, if it is less than a month old, and they're sending you messages in, and the URL where they're going to is like less than a month old, that's kind of weird, So alert on it. Don't be afraid of false positives, I guess, is kind of my is what I would leave this is just make sure that you understand, what's weird, right? So anyways, so this is my standard workflow. I kind of created this. I was brainstorming, trying to understand, if I was able to tell my story to people when we were going from this homegrown SOAR to this corporate tools kind of SOAR kind of thing, what's important to me. And I broke it down into like kind of different like swim lanes, I guess you could call it, and then identify the different threats and risks that work for us. Like I broke things up, and the reason I segmented email off is because right now phishing's huge. Desktop threats, server threats, network threats, and different issues with patching, end user identity, like lost passwords, stuff like that, and and then like computers being stolen, like how we handle that stuff. And I realized pretty quickly that all this is based off of, and I can only see it if I have visibility into each of these things. So like you need to put what I call your visibility glasses on, and you need to gather as much as you can visibility wise. You add things to this visibility stack by talking to your IT architects, your business leaders, and understanding like what's important out there. What are they planning on doing? What AV you use, what two-factor do you use, Office 365 logs, what IDS, to use Bro and Snort. If not, probably should. Firewall logs, what EDR logs you use. There's Carbon Black, CrowdStrike. There's tons of EDR things out there. You need that viewpoint of the desktop. You need to like the when things are executing, and what's happening on that endpoint. And like I said, email logs, all this stuff, kind of factors into this visibility stack. And when you pull it into it, you need to have it searchable. Use Splunk, Elk, whatever whatever you want to use. I think QRadar, stuff like that. And then find ways to generate alerts based on the things that you're seeing. With email, I can't stress enough. Email is a lot different than just getting the header information. A lot of people don't realize that in your header information, there's no BCC field or no undisclosed recipients, or it's actually in the envelope. So getting the envelope out and breaking it up into like the header and sending the header into Splunk. So yeah, you can search for those messages, but we also send URLs into Splunk so that we can search on the URLs that are used in various different emails. Because a lot of times, since the effective URL is the same, they'll send it in different. They'll put a different from address, or they'll send it from a different IP address, or they'll put it on a different subject or a different message ID. They'll send various things, but they'll leave the URL the same. So being able to search across the whole map of these for the URLs is pretty important. So we break the message up into the header, the body, so we can search the body for common keywords, the attachments, so we can look for and identify attachment names, MD5, macros that are in the attachments and things like that, and then the URL. And we kind of separate those out and put them in their own little searching lane, or whatever you want to call it, so we can look for things across the board. And then I looked down and I said, okay, so if I had the perfect world, what do I want to do automation wise? I want to, as much as possible, reduce alert fatigue for my guys. I don't want them to have to dig and hunt through a whole bunch of things to get intel back. I want them to be able to like have it in front of them. So whenever an alert is created, I want to have certain alerts that, of course, are higher up. So like that domain age that I was telling you about, when the domain age of the URL or domain age of the sending person is less than a month, I push that email up to a high alert queue and I remove that message from the mailbox. And I do that because, it's a temporary remove, but I do that because more than likely that's malicious. Or if it comes from like, Nigeria, like I was saying with the IP address, I'm probably going to remove it because we don't have very much business in Nigeria, so we're going to automatically remove it. Now, I'm saying that doesn't work for everybody. You'll have to figure out what is high for you, but anytime you can pause a message that you feel as instant responder and keep it from being delivered is a kind of a win, right? Also, you want to do user lookups because you want to understand from a business perspective user info. For example, who they are, like what division they're in, their email address. You want to know like where they're at, like what geographic area they're in. You want to know like who the manager is and what business unit they're a part of. So, and I say that because like as an instant responder, if I look at a message and I notice that Barry over in HR, they're getting all these financial invoices, or sorry, requests for them to pay invoices. That's kind of weird, right? Because Barry and HR probably shouldn't be paying for Valvoline invoices, right? And they're trying to get the credit card information or stuff like that. So understanding user info and also two-factor whenever and where they're two-factoring from is important information. And you can pull that from your two-factor logs and put that in a user detail tab where you can, like as instant responder, you can click over and see it. Some of the other things though is you want to enrich that data that you're getting. You want to make sure like you're pulling, like if it's an attachment, you want the MD5, you want to look it up in VirusTotal, you want to look it up in like various things, or like you take the URL, send that URL to URL scan. That's a neat tool that lets you like kind of grab the screenshot, put the screenshot into your source so you can see it without actually going there, and then like seeing how other people have kind of classified it as malicious or not. And they also do some heuristic scanning and stuff. VMRay has a tool where you can send the URL up to their sandboxing and sandbox that URL, and it delivers back a report on that stuff. So you want to enrich that data that you're sending into your SOAR or sending into your cyber program, so that you can have that at your instant responders kind of like hands or whatever, and generate alerts. You want to generate, like I said, these alerts so that a human can look at them and make a determination. Some other things, I tell people to do. Right now, there's a big trend in credit harvesters sending you to one place and then redirecting you to another. So you just stopping at the first one whenever you're doing these web crawling, you really got to go maybe even 2 and 3 deep. And then also like, two-factor push, what I talked about earlier, and the result of that two-factor push. That just kind of gives the instant responder heads up of what's kind of happening, right? Also like a PDF, if a PDF's in it, make sure to parse that out so the instant responder kind of look at it quickly. And all of this is to try to help on alert fatigue and keep your instant response team hopping, happy, and kind of moving. On any given kind of day, we can see 200 to 300 alerts in our queue, and we have one guy working those alerts. Or there's been some days we've had 1,000, and we've got one guy on, or one or two guys on the queue working the queue at that time, and they they knock it out. I mean, I'm not saying it's not a busy day, but they knock it out, and at the end of the day, it's like they're not like wanting ready to quit and pull their hair out. But it's because we present the information in a very a very cool way. Also, like I talked about, intel, snort, bro, sandbox, internal intel, external intel, pulling things in. One of the cool, I call it internal intel, is how things were dispositioned in the past. Like you've seen this come in from this user so many times, and how other people have dispositioned it may help uh, uh, shorten the amount of time that another analyst has to spend on digging through everything, right? And stuff. So that's pretty cool. Also, like you want to be able to push a button in your program so that you do things like you do a password reset, so you don't have to call up identity management every time you want to do a password reset, you can write things that let you remove messages from O365. You can write things that let you do forces password resets. There's SOAR programs that you can buy, like various tools out there that you can buy to help you remediate and do things. So very high level, like remove the email, get the analysis through API of some VMRay attachment or whatever. You could even go as far as blocking IP addresses of email, but I mean that's really blocking and tackling. Like you may block an IP address of a known message coming in, but they're just going to change the IP address, right? So just things like that, like and even take it to the point of being able to automatically collect memory. We got to a point where we use a endpoint detection tool where we are able to write a command line interface that basically like waits for the computer to come back on the network and gathers memory from that computer, and like sorts out that memory for us so that like later we can look at it and stuff, or if they're online we gather it live, and stuff like that. So it's pretty cool. But yeah, like you want to be able to like kind of with your SOAR do more with it if you have one or if you're planning on getting one. But like I said, this is a kind of a more advanced security program, and you gotta do things with it, show value, and then at the end of the day you want to document things. You want to be able to tell a story, have usable metrics and dashboards, so that your leadership can go and say, we had this many people compromise and kind of get their password stolen this month, or we had this many people report phishes, we had this many people have antivirus, block this many viruses or whatever, whatever works for your leadership and what they want to know about. Or we created this policy based on what we were seeing. So it's pretty cool to be able to utilize those metrics. Also, make sure to reward your end user for reporting things. I'll talk about that a little bit later, but it's important to kind of pat those end users on the back, because that type of collaboration. We talked about a team. They're a part of your team in a way. They're human sensors, because if you think about it, everything that has beat all the corporate tools make it to the end user. So like an email getting through your program and getting into your user's mailbox, it beat everything. So how are you going to how are you going to see that? Well, your human is going to report that for you. That's the stance that you sort of need to have, and you do that through training and a few other things. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but I can't iterate enough. Remember, commercial prevention tools won't do everything for you. You've got to have a human that's looking at alerts, looking at emails, that's getting in the weeds of things and writing hunts. You need to follow the process, create more internal intel. It's, to me, more valuable, and do more with it. Know who and how they're attacking you, and have a guy or a couple guys that's hunting on a regular basis. Someone who's going out there in the different ISACs, the different Twitter feeds and things like that, and hunting for new threats that are in your environment. Have these guys attending conferences and things like we're doing today, and stuff. So, part of that senior analyst job should be to hunt on a regular basis, because you want to decrease the dwell time and when finding it. You don't want it sitting there, right? And kind of like, in the visibility talk with, make relationships with your business, your IT business relationship managers, your IT architects. Know what's coming down the pipe. Be prepared for it. Talk to the leaders. Have your leader talking to other people to understand what they're planning on rolling out. Are they planning on rolling out a new point of sale system? Are they planning on like HR's recruiting from a different spot? Just understand. You need to understand that for part of the visibility. Also, join some type of focused ISAC. It's really important. There's tons out there. There's the retail ISAC, there's the oil ISAC, there's the aviation one. There's a ton out there. Department of Defense has one. I think even Google and Facebook have their own. But try to find a way to get into various ISACs. And the reason I say that is it's external intel about your area of what you're you're doing. Like, are you a retail location? Are you part of Wendy's and part of, Hardee's or whatever? Are you a food chain? And, what are they seeing? Because more than likely, you've already been reconned like they have, and you guys can share that, various fishes or various attacks that you're seeing. Plus, it's a good way to bounce ideas off of, things you're hunting for and stuff. Also, you understand, I can't say this enough, understand how your business is changing. Like at Ashland and Valvoline, we went through in the 8 years that I've been security, huge changes, vast, like we were one company to becoming two companies, to wiping away our homegrown SOAR, to having to stand up this more corporate tools defined SOAR method, but our process never really changed other than like how we do things, right? Or what tools we use. And that's true for the business. The business is always changing and always trying to stay ahead, especially in the times of COVID. I mean, how many remote workers do you guys have right now? And how were you protecting that? Well, we dropped a proxy on everybody's systems, or suggest that they log into VPN. Not everybody does that, but we've essentially tried to move from, like, as the business is changing, stay with it so we can protect it. Also, start with the general, like I said before, start with the general. Everything is important, and then over time tune it. It's really true with like DLP. Like if you guys have some secret sauce that if it got out, it would hurt you financially. So if you're trying to form a DLP program, data loss prevention, maybe talk to the business and try to figure out with the cybersecurity thing, like, what's important for you guys, like what's important for your business, what do you want to protect, and then tune that over time. So, start with a very broad, everything's important, and then talk to the business, talk to people, understand, look through things, put it through the OODA loop, understand and tune over time to see what's important and create hunts based on what you find. Like for example, like not all Windows logs are important. Some people just send all of the Windows logs into Splunk, so it makes it very hard to search or to understand them. Even the messages that are sent in, they're very wordy and long. And find ways to tune your Windows logs. Like, we're looking for, we have a firefighter style ID, like, it's very important. And we're looking for that, and like the event ID uh, that it's a bad logon, and if it like does bad logon like 3 times, we alert on it. Somebody's maybe trying to do something, and those IDs are super important to us. So when we see someone incorrect password, or bad logon 3 or 4 times with that account, we kick off an alert, and then we go to the owner of that firefighter ID, and it was like, what's going on? So keep those kinds of things in mind. Firewall logs, like, we do look for recon and things, but recon's not as important as looking through the PCAP and seeing posts, or like somebody doing a git in a PCAP, and then right after it you see them posting things. That's a little concerning or whatever. Also, keep your Splunk searches or elk searches super happy. Your file extraction. So we eventually got a guy, we call him the tools guy, that is doing this on a daily basis. So they're essentially looking through the field search extractions. They're checking to see if Splunk Elk has updated things. If, like, for example, our network firewall logs, they went through some type of upgrade, and now the log they're sending us looks different. And the reason I say that is because if your search isn't happy, it's not going to find anything. So your visibility is going to kind of get impaired or whatever. So it's super important to understand that. And also, lots of false positives. It's good. It just means that you need to review, and tune out the noise. Also, I kind of want to take a little quick shift and talk about phishing. And I said I would talk about it a little bit later, but phishing is super important right now. In 2020, phishing it's nearly doubled. Password credential harvesters are big right now. We're seeing a lot of Emotet, kind of come back, and things like that. So being able to find ways, and the way we find Emotet, of course, is look for the macro, and if there's a macro in a Word document or Excel spreadsheet, let the incident responder look at that. If it's garbled, then it's probably Emotet, right? So, like obfuscation or whatever. So look at those macros and things like that. And then educate your user. It's super important that you understand and have some type of user awareness. Human sensor report button. There's things out there like Cofense is one, KnowBe4 is one. They have a reporter button. I know Office 365 has a reporter button, and I'm pretty sure, and unless something has changed recently, that report goes to Microsoft. I don't know if you can copy it and make it go somewhere else, but you want to see those fishes. You want to see everything that's reported into your queue so that you can learn from those fishes. Because remember, they're beating your mailbox tools. They're beating your gateway security stuff, your email gateway security stuff. So if you treat your user what a fish looks like through education and awareness, then you're going to start. They're almost a human sensor where they're sending stuff into your alert queue, and it only takes a second for an incident responder who's been trained to understand the difference between a newsletter and a actual legitimate fish. So don't ever beat up on the end user for submitting newsletters and stuff to you. You don't want them to second guess themselves. Just FP it and move on. Like move on through those, and then pat them on the back when they submit things that are actual legitimate fishes. Like send the user and like congratulations, thanks for helping keep us safe. Stuff like that. Also, I talked about this a little earlier. I can't stress enough. You look at headers, you break out URLs, attachments, you scan the body for keywords, you look at the envelope of the message, not just the headers. There's more to email. And if you're not comfortable with email detection, ask for help. Email's huge. Talk to your Mimecast folks, your Ironport, your Proofpoint, your whoever else your gateway is, Office, whatever, and ask for help with those people as far as like detection or even there's some tools out there like VMRay's got some stuff that you can pump all your email through and stuff like that. So just ask for help if you're not comfortable with email. Like I said, I've got 20-ish experience like with email, so I was pretty comfortable with email, but still having the tools to put things through to help you with your detections to enrich your data is good. Just don't always rely on it. Like even if you get something that says it's false positive or benign from the product, you may still want to look at it. We get from Euroscan and Virus Total and some other places, we get benign results back, but I'm like, that's not benign. It's a second hop credential harvester. So being able to present that screenshot up to my analysts and seeing that looks fishy, and I told people all the time, use your gut. It looks fishy. It probably is, and you just got to prove that it is. And have people do that. It takes a human to do that. It's super important. Um, and I want to talk a little bit about our sandboxing. We sandbox attachments. So we went through, like I said, we went through a transition where we had some homegrown things, and we were transitioning into a new world of corporate tools kind of thing. So we were looking for a pretty cool sandbox. We used one that was very popular for many years. It was acquired, so we took it for an opportunity to start shopping for a new one when our contract was up, and it was last year, and stumbled onto VMRay and started talking to the guys. And we had our requirements. We wanted it automatic. We wanted to be able to interact with API. We wanted it to have something different, a very robust analysis with report, some signature detection, ease of use for my guys so they can easily submit things that aren't being submitted by the SOAR. And we wanted to have a good relationship with the customer support. When I buy a product, I try to make sure that I go in and I tell them I want this to be a partnership more than I'm just sending you tickets. I want you to come back to me and give me ideas, because I can't think of everything, right? Like and explain to me whenever like a new upgrade comes out, what kind of cool features can I implement into my security program and how can I use it, and meet with them regularly. Don't just buy a product and never talk to them again, because you'll get stale. Make sure to talk about the customer service. So when I was going through those things, and I talked to various vendors, I felt VMRay met those requirements, which is awesome. Some other things they add to it, of course, is instead of a good API, they have a great API. You could do a lot with it. I'm gonna talk a little bit about that next, but there's a lot of cool things you can do with it. Also, they do some cool heuristic scans. They have multiple AV scanners, URL reputations, things like that. So it's pretty cool. Also, being able to interact live from the console, like for benign results. So sometimes the automatic submission and VMRay will come back benign, but they give me the ability of resubmitting it and interacting with it. So I can resubmit it for my SOAR, click a link, go into it, and then actually type in the password or interact with that piece of malware, do whatever, and that's pretty handy. It's pretty neat. All right, so moving on. This is what it looks like in my SOAR, and like I was saying, I've just yesterday updated this from the record to the name of the intel that we're pulling it from. I thought it was a little better, but you can submit this via API. You can pull results into your alerts. You can pull back the verdict, as you can see here, malicious. You can take a screenshot of the execution. So you can pull back the whole analysis. You can look through, like you can click the VMRay submitted URL and check it out, or you can click on a link and go out there and look at the actual VMRay results, or you can pull them back in a PDF. And it'll tell you all the results in a PDF if you wanted to look deeper into it. I try to give enough information back from my team so that they can see that's malicious. This one didn't have a categorization because for whatever reason, but sometimes there's a categorization there or whatever, and it tells the threat names based on their their scans or whatever. This is a URL submission, which is a little different than an attachment submission. But I pull back the MD5 hash of the attachment and things like that. So that this is all kind of cool stuff. Also, if you don't have virus total and a way to submit things through VMRay, you can go into buy virus total key and then put it into your VMRay, and then they'll run it through virus total automatic submission, and you can pull those results back into your incident response or whatever you're doing, or even if you're building something, you can interact with the API, which is pretty cool. Also, if you get your sample information, you take the MD5 hash, right, that it pulls back and tells you when it says it's malicious. What we do is whenever VMRay tells us something's malicious, we go and scan the environment for this MD5 hash somewhere else, like in our EDR. Like, did this MD5 execute somewhere else? So we're looking for it all across the board. So that's like, really cool. Message comes in or whatever, URL goes out, gets the different MD5. We see it was downloaded onto some other, through EDR capabilities, this MD5 somewhere else in the environment. And pulling all that together is what I mean by automatic response, right? It's pretty neat. Also, kind of the high level, I'm not going to attempt to be an expert at this by any means, but the sample verdict equals malicious is what you're kind of looking for with the API, REST API. So most everything you need is in that sample. You can pull the PDF report, you can get indicators of compromise. And here what I mean by all versus malicious. Some people will only pull back the malicious ones. I say you pull back all of them, whether they're benign or not, and then let your incident response staff mark things malicious or not in your environment. The reason I say that is because sometimes things get pulled back as benign that are actually malicious in any enterprise tool, right? Because it takes a human to sometimes to be ahead of the game, right? Other things you could do, of course, is resubmit, which I think I said before, and then retrieve all analysis archive. This is big for me. Being one of the lead incident responders for Valvoline, I analyze events that we have. So events, like I said, are things in my environment that get escalated up into like kind of a compromise-ish stance, right? We've got password stole, file made it to the system and executed, and stuff like that. So being able to pull back that analysis archive into an event. So a year down the road, I have to go into I want to look at that event, and having that analysis in like an archive attached onto my event is really cool, right? And all the stuff's there, even the file. So being able to look through that and understand that and kind of keep that for historical analysis is super handy. And then absolutely do this. You may have to set up a couple users, but your API submission settings need to be very standardized. Ben really helped me understand what my standardization needs to look like with my API user. So this API user is who my SOAR is submitting things as. You want to separate that from your analysts that are using the product. I'm not saying your standards are separate, but you need to have a clear separate API user when you're submitting things. That way you can sort by and understand what an automatic submission looks like versus a submission that, like, Tom Smith submitting as one of your instant responders or whatever. And with that being said, of course, your web submission, this is the end user or the your CCERT team members submission settings. Set both of these if you end up liking what VMRay offers, but make sure that's you're setting your standards in VMRay. Some other things I want to talk about really quickly is I want to kind of wrap up with how to tell your story to business leadership. I kind of spoke about that a few times. You want to make sure that you're showing metrics about the attacks. You want to show value, like who's attacking you, user wins in education. Like, it's show value of this investment that the leadership is making for your cybersecurity team. It's super important that you show that you're um, you know, I'm doing these things for us to make us more secure, because, like, it's more than just a giant dam of plugging and patching and things, because that's what most people think security is like blocking and tackling, like patching servers, making sure antivirus is updated. What I'm talking about is not that, right? I'm talking about you as a CSERT incident responder team looking for things that are doing all of, like, meeting all of that already. So it's hard to grasp that sometimes for people. That's why you have to show the value of the investment. Show what processes are coming out of this program. Show what attacks that are happening. One of the cool stories we had is we went to the board to show them some stuff, and we set up this demo environment, and we put poison ivy on a system, and then went out and had another guy in another room attack the computer. It was on a separate network and all this stuff. It was like very contained, and turned the camera on, and the guy who's one of the leaders was using the computer, like, and we turned the camera on, and we had the screen up behind him of the guy who was attacking that PC, and it showed him on the camera, and everybody started chuckling, and it really drove home, like, what we were talking about is, like, people are attacking us. There's things that are out there that you can do things with, and it was a very early part of our cyber development, but we needed to find a way to show that investment value. And don't be afraid to ask for stuff, tools. I mean, for whatever reason, I guess that we were always afraid to spend money or to value, like, human people. And don't be afraid to ask for that stuff. I need more people. I need more tools. I need to show, but you need to show the value, and that's why you want to do metrics. You want to show attacking. You want to show when, user wins in education. You want to show the value of your investment. And then it takes time to build that rapport with them. You got to put effort into it. It's, like I said, the very first slide, it takes a team, it takes a village, and it's very important that you build that rapport with your business, with your IT staff, with your vendors, and with counterparts like myself, so that you can build a really good CSERT program. So that's it for me. I know I went through a lot. Hopefully you guys have a lot of good questions. If you don't, that's okay. But I'll turn that over to Zach.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. We actually did have one question come in, and basically the question is, how does the incident response team work with security awareness initiatives / training?
Yeah, sure. So in Valvoline we have kind of, I guess, three pillars. We have identity access management. We have your policies and procedures, your GRE, your all those the pillars, like the people that are making the processes, that are doing the auditing, that are doing the making sure, like, we onboard things securely, do things like that. And then we have, like, certain IT architecture kind of, or security architecture. So, like, we have three things kind of like broken out: that education, that policies, procedures, making sure that we're out there, like, in user interaction with, like, how we want to train people and stuff. That kind of falls into their purview, that policies, procedures kind of tier. Now, what we do, what's really interesting, is the security phishing stuff. We've selected a vendor that really does a good job with like putting real life like world fishes in front of me, or lets me make them up. So as an instant response team, we rotate this around in our guys, and it's really fun for them to do. They'll come up with a fish every month, and then like a bigger fish every quarter of the things that we're seeing in our environment, and test the users by sending this fish out. So we may see a big bunch of credential harvesters one month, and we sent out tons of like, to the end users, real life credential harvesting looking fishing kind of thing. So, I don't know if that answers the question exactly, but like you have to train you have to have people to train your end user and communicate your message that way too. But it's really fun for the instant responders to almost like, fish the end users to build up this like security, like kind of training portfolio. One idea I've always wanted to do, and we were in the process of doing it before COVID, which I think would be amazing, is to create a cyber day, because there's actually a national cyber day, right? And on that day, you have your CSERT stand up and talk about, or your leader in IT, whoever that is, about cybersecurity, right? About, passwords and very like what you're doing. And a lot of people don't realize, they look at IT sometimes as a roadblock, but like be very positive about what you're doing, and then have rooms broken up into on this day with like little escape room games to each of them, talking about various cyber related things, like have them hack a password, and then like make it really easy for them to hack the password, like with just a cracker, and like that be the first room that they have to get out of, and then it explains password strength in detail to them, and then have them move over to like a fish, and then show them the anatomy of a fish. You can set this up, it's pretty easy, but like have them fish something and then send it out and explain like all this stuff and like what a fish looks like, and then like lastly talk about like why it's important to do, to make sure you hop on the VPN, but like, show them like some type of like escape room style games, password hacking kind of thing as you're teaching them this lesson. So yeah, I think making it fun and interactive is pretty cool too. I hope that answers your question. I don't know if it kind of did, but that's kind of how we handle things. Is we do have a team that does education and end user awareness.
Very cool. And I think this is a great opportunity to pick your brain. So I'll just go ahead and say, like, anyone else has questions, please send them on over. We did get actually one other one, and I think I'm embellishing a little bit, but how would you approach improving and building an incident response team? And what, in your experience, has been the challenges for the startup team?
Yeah, we came from nothing 8 years ago. Real, I mean, I don't say nothing. We had to very much what most people have, a very like blocking and tackling mindset, where we were patching up, making sure antivirus was patched, and that's that has its place. But to create a cybersecurity incident response team, you have to make an active decision that you think you're compromised every single day, right? You have to have that stance, and that's the reason for the team. Then you have to hire, like like I said, start with your network guy, your email guy, your desktop guy internally. Start to build that process up. Attend and join ISACs. Utilize external intel at first. Find something you do really well. Start there, whether that's looking through logs in antivirus or email, or whatever. Start there. Just really just take that first step and start, and then and collaborate and understand what other people are doing, and then start to kind of put the pieces together and build on from there. It takes time. It takes hard work. It takes a team. We didn't do this overnight. Our cyber team, when we tell people we created a SOAR, we created a collaboration tool called ACE. People go, "Whoa, what?" And you can ask some of the guys with VMRay when I talk about it. It's pretty neat. And it didn't happen overnight, right? This program did not happen overnight. This is something that we did over a course of a few years, and we really fine tuned it and honed it over the last couple. But reach out and ask those questions, and get the tools you need, and start to put the pieces together. And start somewhere. Don't try to do this like as a grand scale, because it's overwhelming. Just focus and start somewhere, And then you'll find that as you learn, you'll find out that you need other things. And then you'll learn a lot and start to put those pieces together and build on that. So it kind of builds, right?
Very cool. I think what we can do now is maybe start to wrap things up. And I just want to say, Jim, I really appreciate what you were able to share with us today. And then we were talking during sound check, and I realized that your brain is constantly churning, and you're always looking for ways to improve and new ways to do things, more efficiently, better, if you will. And so
Yeah.
I think that's really cool. I think it's what's led to your success overall. And so really, again, just appreciate what you were able to provide for us today.